She took a DNA test for fun, and the billionaire CEO was marked as her daughter's father. The billionaire on the screen was my daughter's father. I hadn't spoken his name in 11 years. He'd walked away when I was pregnant, chose his empire over us, and I'd raised Jane alone, scraping by while his face appeared on magazine covers. I'd buried that chapter so deep I forgot it could bleed. But a DNA test doesn't care what you've buried. When Jane saw his name appear as her biological match, everything I'd protected her from, every question I'd deflected, every lie I'd wrapped in love, shattered in a single moment. Because children don't unsee truth. They seek it. And once she knew his name, there was no going back. The DNA test wasn't supposed to change my life. It was supposed to be a joke. A late-night impulse purchase after Jane fell asleep on the couch beside me. Her science homework spread across the cushions like confetti. She'd been learning about genetics at school. Punnett squares, eye color, dominant and recessive traits. The kind of lessons that make 10-year-olds ask big questions. She'd looked up at me that night with that curious tilt of her head, the one that always made my chest ache, and asked softly, "Mom, where do we come from?" I smiled. I always smiled. "Lots of places," I told her, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "That's the fun part." And that's how it started. Innocent. Simple. When the ad popped up later that evening, "Discover your ancestry in just weeks," I clicked without thinking. I didn't expect anything shocking. I knew my own past. I knew Jane's story. Or at least, I thought I did. 2 weeks later, I was folding laundry in the living room when the email arrived. The notification lit up my phone screen. "Your DNA results are ready," Jane squealed when I told her. She bounced on the bed, eyes bright, talking a mile a minute about Viking blood and royal ancestors and maybe being related to someone famous. I laughed, really laughed. It felt good. We opened the results together, heads bent close over my laptop, shoulders touching. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and pencil erasers. We scrolled through the ancestry breakdown first. Irish, German, a splash of Scandinavian. Jane grinned at the Viking part. "I knew it," she whispered. Then we reached the parental match section. The smile slid off my face so fast it felt physical. A name appeared on the screen, bold and unmistakable. Andrew Larry, 49.9% match, confirmed biological parent. I laughed. Out loud. Too loud. "That's impossible," I said, my voice brittle and sharp in the quiet room. "There must be a mistake." Jane leaned closer, squinting at the screen. Her face changed. Her eyes went wide. "Mom," she said slowly, "isn't that the billionaire guy? The one on the news?" My hands went cold. Actually cold, fingertips numb, palms clammy. Andrew Larry, tech visionary, billionaire CEO. The man whose face stared down from magazine covers at grocery checkout lines. The man who gave TED Talks about innovation and legacy and building the future. The man whose company was worth more than some countries' GDP. The man I hadn't seen in 11 years. The man who walked away when I told him I was pregnant. The man who chose ambition over us. I closed the laptop so fast Jane flinched. "That's enough for tonight," I said, forcing calm into my voice even though my heart was slamming against my ribs. "Go brush your teeth." She hesitated. Jane had always been perceptive. Too perceptive for a 10-year-old. She could read the tension in a room before most adults even noticed it. "Is something wrong?" she asked softly. I kissed her forehead, holding her small face in my hands for just a second longer than usual. "No, sweetheart. Just tired." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she nodded and patted down the hallway toward the bathroom. The moment her door clicked shut, I opened the laptop again. My hands were shaking. I stared at the name on the screen, Andrew Larry. It had been over a decade. I had built an entire life without him. I had raised Jane alone, through sleepless nights and scraped knees in parent-teacher conferences where I sat by myself while other families arrived in pairs. I had been enough. We had been enough. But now his name was on the screen. And Jane had seen it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning in slow, sickening circles. The streetlight outside cast shadows that moved across the walls like ghosts. Because the DNA test hadn't uncovered a secret, it had dragged one back into the light. Andrew and I had met before the billions, before the glass towers and private jets and magazine covers. He was brilliant, driven, intoxicating, and terrified of anything that slowed him down. We were young, reckless, passionate in the way people are when they think they have all the time in the world. When I told him I was pregnant, he went quiet, not angry, not cruel, just quiet, then distant, then gone. He wired money once, a lump sum with no note, no call, no explanation. I stared at that bank transfer for hours, numb. It felt like hush money, like a severance package for a job I never applied for. I never heard from him again. I told myself I didn't need him, that Jane didn't need him, that we would be fine on our own. And we were. I had built a life from stubbornness and love and long nights. I had never planned to reopen that door. But now, Jane had seen the name. And once a child sees a truth, it cannot be unseen. The next morning, she didn't ask about it. But I could feel the question hovering between us like smoke. She watched me more carefully. She was quieter at breakfast. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I made her lunch. I drove her to school. I kissed her goodbye and told her I loved her. And then I sat in the car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. Because I knew what was coming. Jane wasn't going to let this go. She was too smart, too curious, too brave. She had seen her father's name, and children, especially children who've grown up with missing pieces. They seek truth. Even when it's painful, even when it's complicated, even when their mothers are terrified of what that truth might do. If you've ever had a secret you thought you'd buried forever, a name you swore you'd never say again, and watched it resurface when you least expected it, then you know what I felt that night. That sickening mix of dread and inevitability. Subscribe right now, because what happens next isn't just my story. It's every mother who's ever had to choose between protecting her child and telling her the truth. And trust me, this is just the beginning. 3 days passed. 3 days of Jane watching me with questions in her eyes. 3 days of me pretending everything was normal while my phone sat like a bomb in my pocket. Then the email arrived. I was at work, covering a shift at the bookstore, shelving returns in the back room, when my phone buzzed. The sender name made my stomach drop. Ellis Carrington, Office of Andrew Larry. The subject line was clinical, professional, recent genetic testing, confidential matter. I stood there in the stockroom, surrounded by boxes of unshelved books, and felt the past 11 years collapse. My finger hovered over the delete button. Then I opened it. Ms. Baker, we believe there may have been an error involving a recent genetic test that incorrectly listed Mr. Andrew Larry as a biological match. Mr. Larry would like to speak with you privately to clarify this matter and discuss next steps. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience. Respectfully, Ellis Carrington, Executive Assistant to Andrew Larry. I read it 3 times. Not denial, not confusion, damage control. The word error made my blood boil. Like 11 years could be reduced to a clerical mistake. Like Jane, brilliant, beautiful Jane, was a glitch in his perfect billionaire narrative. He knew. Andrew Larry, billionaire, untouchable, always 3 steps ahead, knew that his name had appeared on that DNA test, and his first instinct wasn't to reach out himself. It was to have his assistant send a carefully worded email suggesting an error. I didn't reply. I lasted exactly 53 minutes. Because that night, Jane found me standing at the kitchen window, staring out at nothing, phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me in her pajamas, bare feet on the cold tile, waiting. Finally, in a voice so small it broke my heart, she asked, "Is he my dad?" No child should ever have to ask that question so plainly. I turned to face her. Her dark eyes, his eyes, searched mine for answers I didn't want to give. I couldn't lie. "Yes," I said. She nodded slowly, absorbing it. processing it in that quiet, serious way she had. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. Does he know about me? The truth burned in my throat. He knows now. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Why didn't he stay? She asked. And there it was. The question I had spent 11 years trying to protect her from. I knelt down so we were eye to eye. I took her hands in mine, so small, so trusting. Because he was scared, I said carefully, and because he chose his dreams over us. Did you ask him to stay? No, I admitted. I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I just let him go. She considered this with that unsettling wisdom children sometimes possess. Maybe he didn't know how important we were. My throat tightened. Maybe, I whispered. But I knew the truth. Andrew had known exactly what he was walking away from. He just didn't think it was worth staying for. I tucked Jane into bed that night, but she grabbed my hand before I could leave. Mom? Yeah, baby. Are you going to let me meet him? The question hung in the dark between us. Do you want to? I asked. I don't know, she said honestly. But I think I need to know if he's sorry, or if he just doesn't care. 10 years old and already bracing for rejection. I smoothed her hair back, my heart aching. If you want to meet him, we'll make it happen, I said. But Jane, he might not be what you're hoping for. He might disappoint you. Like he disappointed you? The question was so direct it took my breath away. Yes, I admitted. Like he disappointed me. But you're still going to let me try? Because it's not about what I want, I said. It's about what you need. After Jane finally fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at the email from Andrew's assistant. I thought about ignoring it, deleting it, pretending it never happened. But Jane's question echoed in my mind. Does he know about me? He knew he had a child somewhere, a biological consequence of a relationship he'd erased. But he didn't know Jane. He didn't know she loved astronomy and collected rocks. He didn't know she hated peas, but would eat broccoli if you put cheese on it. He didn't know she whispered to herself when she was nervous, or that she cried during animal movies but never admitted it. He didn't know her at all, and part of me wanted to keep it that way. But another part, the part that saw the hope and fear warring in Jane's eyes, knew I couldn't. So I wrote back. Short. Direct. No emotion. Mr. Larry, there is no error. Jane is your daughter. If you would like to meet her, we can arrange that. But if this is about protecting your image or managing a scandal, don't bother. She deserves better than damage control. Stephen Baker. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came in 47 minutes. Not from his assistant this time. From Andrew. Stephen, it's not about my image. I would like to meet her. And you, whenever you're ready. I'm sorry it took this long. I'm sorry for everything. Andrew? I stared at those words until they blurred. I'm sorry. 2 words. 11 years too late. But looking at them on the screen, simple, unpolished, direct, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not trust, just acknowledgement. He wasn't denying Jane. He wasn't running again, at least not yet. Some names don't just appear on a screen. They reopen wounds you thought had healed. And sometimes, the scariest part isn't facing the person who hurt you. It's letting your child walk into the same fire and hoping they don't get burned. We agreed to meet the following Saturday. Neutral ground. A private room in an upscale hotel. The kind of place billionaires went when they didn't want to be seen. The kind of place I'd never set foot in before. I didn't tell Jane immediately. I needed time to prepare myself, to figure out what to say, how to explain that her father, the billionaire on magazine covers, wanted to meet her. But Jane had inherited Andrew's intelligence and my stubbornness. She wasn't going to wait. Wednesday night, I was in my bedroom folding laundry when I heard her voice from the hallway. Mom, can I ask you something? Sure, sweetheart. She appeared in the doorway, clutching her tablet to her chest. I looked him up, she said quietly. my hands stilled on the shirt I was folding. Looked who up? Andrew Larry, my dad. The words sounded foreign in her mouth, uncertain, like trying on shoes that might not fit. She crossed the room and sat on the edge of my bed, holding out the tablet. The screen showed a Forbes article, Tech Visionary Andrew Larry on Building the Future. His photo stared back at me, older than I remembered, more polished, salt and pepper at the temples, but unmistakably him. He's really rich, Jane said, not quite a question. Yes. And he really didn't know about me? I sat down beside her, choosing my words carefully. He knew I was pregnant, but he left before you were born, before he knew your name or what you looked like or who you'd become. Jane scrolled through the article, her face serious. Too serious for 10. It says here he doesn't have any children. The words hit me like a slap. Of course, in every interview, every profile, every public appearance, Andrew Larry was childless, unmarried, devoted entirely to his work. Jane wasn't just absent from his life, she had never existed in it at all. That's going to change, I said quietly. Jane looked up at me, hope and fear warring in her dark eyes. He wants to meet me. Yes, Saturday, if you want to. She nodded immediately. Too quickly. I want to. Jane, I need you to understand something. I took her hands in mine. He might not be what you're hoping for. People don't always. He might disappoint you. Like he disappointed you? The question was so direct, so clear-eyed, that I couldn't deflect. Yes, I admitted. Exactly like that. But you're still letting me meet him. Because it's not about what I want, I said. It's about what you need. And if you need to meet him to answer your questions, then that's what we'll do. Jane considered this for a long moment. Then she said something that shattered me. What if he doesn't like me? I pulled her into my arms, fierce and protective. Then he's a fool, I said into her hair. Because you are extraordinary. And if he can't see that, it's his loss, not yours. She nodded against my shoulder, but I felt her tremble slightly. She was scared, and I couldn't protect her from this. The power imbalance terrified me. Billionaire versus single mother. His world of marble lobbies and private elevators versus my world of overdue bills and double shifts. But for Jane, I'd walk into any world, even his. Thursday morning, another email arrived. This one wasn't from Andrew's assistant. It was from Andrew himself. Stephen, thank you for agreeing to this. I know it's not easy. I've arranged a private meeting space, neutral ground, quiet, no press. Saturday at 2 p.m. The address is below. I want you to know I'm not coming into this with expectations. I just want to meet her, to see who she is, to try to understand what I walked away from. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but please, tell her I'm grateful she's willing to meet me. Andrew, I read it twice. No corporate polish this time. No assistant filtering his words. Just him. Raw, vulnerable, human. And somehow that made it worse. Because it would have been easier to hate him if he'd stayed distant. If he'd treated this like a business transaction. But this felt real. Friday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed running through scenarios. What I'd say. How I'd act. Whether I'd be able to keep my composure when I saw him again. The last time we'd been in the same room, I was 24 and pregnant and watching him pack a bag. Now I was 35. A mother. Stronger than I'd been then, but I didn't feel stronger. I felt terrified. At midnight, I gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. Made tea I didn't drink. Stood at the window watching the empty street below. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know you're probably not sleeping either. I'm not asking to talk. I just wanted to say, I'm scared too. See you tomorrow. I stared at that message for a long time. Andrew Larry, billionaire, CEO, man who commanded boardrooms and gave TED Talks. Scared. Just like me. I didn't respond. But I didn't delete it either. Saturday arrived faster than I wanted. I dressed carefully that morning, Nothing that looked like I was trying to impress him, but nothing that screamed struggling single mother either. Dark jeans, a simple sweater. Just me. Confident. Controlled. Jane changed outfits 4 times. "Does this look okay?" she asked, spinning in a simple blue dress. "You look beautiful," I said. "Do you think he'll think I look like him?" I studied her face. The dark eyes, the serious expression, the intelligence that radiated from her even at 10 years old. "Yes," I said honestly. "You have his eyes." "Is that good or bad?" "It just is," I said. We arrived at the hotel 15 minutes early. The lobby was all marble floors and hushed voices, the kind of place where money whispered instead of shouted. A woman in a crisp suit met us at the elevator. "Ms. Baker, Mr. Larry is waiting in the Aspen suite. This way, please." Jane's hand tightened in mine as we rode the elevator up. I could feel her pulse racing through her small palm. "You okay?" I whispered. She nodded, but her face had gone pale. The elevator doors opened, and there, standing by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, was Andrew Larry. He turned when we entered. For a moment, no one moved. 11 years collapsed into a single breath. He looked older, more tired. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But those eyes, dark, intelligent, haunted, were exactly the same. And when his gaze dropped to Jane, I watched his entire face transform. Recognition. Not intellectual. Visceral. He saw himself in her. The resemblance was undeniable. The eyes. The tilt of her head. The way she stood, chin up, shoulders back, bracing for impact. "Hi," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. Jane pressed closer to my side. "Hi," she whispered. Andrew crossed the room slowly, carefully, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. When he reached us, he stopped. He looked at me first. Really looked at me, and I saw guilt in every line of his face. "Stephen," he said quietly. "Thank you for coming." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Then he knelt down so he was at Jane's eye level. "I'm Andrew," he said gently, "and I know this is strange, but I'm really, really glad to meet you." Jane studied him with that serious, assessing gaze she used when she was trying to figure something out. "You're taller than I thought you'd be," she said. Andrew smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "You're braver than I thought you'd be," he said. "Mom says you left before I was born." The smile faded. "I did," he said simply. "And that's the biggest mistake I've ever made." Jane tilted her head, considering. "Do you wish you'd stayed?" The question was so simple, so devastating. Andrew's voice cracked when he answered. "Every single day." Walking into Andrew Larry's world felt like stepping through a door that should have stayed closed. But as I watched my daughter meet her father for the first time, watched her decide whether to trust the man who'd abandoned us, I realized some doors don't close until you walk through them. And there's no going back once you do. There are moments in life when you have to choose between protecting yourself and giving someone a second chance they might not deserve. I'd built walls for 11 years. Good walls, strong ones. But watching my daughter stand there, brave enough to meet the father who'd never known her name, I realized something. Sometimes the bravest thing we do isn't shielding our children from pain. It's trusting them to handle the truth. If you've ever had to make that choice, or if you're making it right now, drop a comment. Tell me your story. And hit subscribe, because what happens next changes everything. We sat down in the suite's living area, Jane and I on one sofa, Andrew in a chair across from us. The space between us felt like a canyon. The room was beautiful in that sterile, expensive way. Abstract art on the walls, coffee table that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Everything carefully curated to be impressive and forgettable at the same time. For a few minutes, no one spoke. Jane sat pressed against my side, her small hand gripping mine. Andrew sat forward, elbows on his knees, looking at her like she might vanish if he blinked. I watched him memorize her face, the way her nose wrinkled when she was thinking. The way she bit her bottom lip when she was nervous. Every small gesture. Finally, Jane broke the silence. "Can I ask you questions?" Andrew nodded immediately. "Anything. Whatever you want to know. Do you like science?" A smile flickered across his face. "I love science, physics mostly. What about you?" "I love astronomy," Jane said, warming slightly. "I want to be an astrophysicist when I grow up." "That's ambitious," Andrew said, and I heard genuine admiration in his voice. "What's your favorite planet?" "Saturn, because of the rings. They're made of ice and rock, and they're beautiful, but also structured, organized, chaos arranged into patterns." Andrew's expression shifted, recognition dawning. "I used to say the exact same thing," he said quietly. "When I was your age, I had a poster of Saturn on my bedroom wall." Jane's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really. I stared at it every night before I went to sleep. Wondered what it would be like to see it up close." "I do too," Jane said, excitement breaking through her nervousness. "I watched them, this strange, tentative connection forming over something as simple as a shared love of a planet millions of miles away. And I saw what Andrew saw. Not just physical resemblance, but temperament, interests. The way Jane's mind worked. Precise, curious, seeking patterns in chaos. She was his daughter in ways that had nothing to do with DNA tests. "What else do you like?" Andrew asked, leaning forward like every word mattered. Jane launched into a description of her rock collection, her science fair project, her favorite books about space exploration. Andrew listened like she was presenting groundbreaking research, asking follow-up questions, genuinely engaged. And slowly, I felt Jane relax against me. After about 20 minutes, her questions shifted. "Why didn't you want to meet me before?" The room went silent. Andrew's composure, the careful control he'd maintained, cracked. His hands clenched. He took a breath. "It's not that I didn't want to," he said carefully. "I didn't know about you. Not really." "Mom said you knew she was pregnant?" "I did." "So you knew about me." Andrew glanced at me briefly, then back to Jane. "I knew there was going to be a baby," he said. "But I didn't know about you. I didn't know your name. I didn't know you'd love astronomy or collect rocks or be brave enough to sit here and ask me the hard questions I deserve to answer." Jane considered this with that serious, analytical expression. "That's kind of a technicality," she said. Despite everything, I almost smiled. My daughter, calling out a billionaire on his rationalization. "You're right," Andrew admitted. "It is. The truth is I was scared. And selfish. And I convinced myself that leaving was the right choice because it was the easier choice." "Did you ever think about me?" Jane asked. The question hung in the air. I watched Andrew's throat work. Watched him struggle with truth versus comfort. He chose truth. "Yes," he said, voice rough. "More than you know. Every year on your birthday, even though I didn't know when it was, I wondered. If you were happy, if you looked like me or your mom, if you'd ever want to know who I was." "But not enough to come back," Jane said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. And somehow, that made it cut deeper. "No," Andrew said quietly, "not enough to come back. And I'm sorrier about that than I know how to say." Jane nodded slowly. Then she said, "Mom says sorry is just a word unless you prove it with actions." Andrew's eyes flicked to mine, brief, pained, then back to Jane. "Your mom is right," he said. "She's right about a lot of things." The conversation continued, but I was only half listening. Because I was watching Andrew's face. Every time Jane moved, he tracked her with his eyes. When she tucked her hair behind her ear, a gesture I'd seen him do 1,000 times 12 years ago, his breath caught. When she frowned in concentration, the same crease appeared between her eyebrows that he had. When she laughed at something small, his whole face lit up. The resemblance was undeniable, not just the dark eyes or the shape of her face, but the way her mind worked, the precision in her language. the way she processed information before speaking. She was Stephen Baker's daughter in heart and habit and resilience. But she was Andrew Larry's daughter in blood and bone and brain, and watching him see that, really see it for the first time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just anger, grief. Grief for what Jane had missed. For the father who should have been there for first words and first steps and 1,000 small moments. For the years Andrew had stolen from both of them through his cowardice. After about an hour, Jane excused herself to use the bathroom. The moment she left the room, the careful politeness evaporated. Andrew stood abruptly, crossed to the window, pressed his palms flat against the glass like he needed something solid to hold. "She's incredible," he said, his back to me. "I know. You raised an incredible kid, Stephen. I know that too." He turned to face me then, and I saw his careful composure had shattered completely. His eyes were red. His hands shook. "I don't know what to say," he said. "I don't know how to make this right." "You can't," I said simply. "You can't make it right. It's done." "Then what do I do?" I stood, needing to be at eye level with him. Needing him to see me, not the girl he left, but the woman who survived. "You show up," I said. "If you're going to be in her life, you show up, not sometimes. Not when it's convenient. Not until something more important comes along. You show up every single time, because she's already been abandoned once, and I will not let it happen again." My voice was quiet, controlled, but every word landed like a stone. "I understand," Andrew said. "Do you?" I asked. "Because I don't think you understand what you're asking for. Being a parent isn't board meetings and quarterly earnings. It's showing up at 2 a.m. when she has a nightmare. It's helping with math homework even when you're exhausted. It's putting her first even when everything in you wants to choose yourself." "I know I failed at that before." "This isn't about before," I interrupted. "This is about now. About whether you're capable of being what she needs. Not what you think she needs. What she actually needs." Andrew was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I want to try. I know I don't deserve the chance. I know I have no right to ask. But I'm asking anyway. Please let me try to be her father." The word, father, hit me like a physical blow. Because he wasn't her father. Not in any way that mattered. I was the one who'd walked the floors at night. I was the one who'd bandaged scraped knees and dried tears and celebrated every milestone alone. But he was the one whose eyes she had. The one whose mind worked like hers. The one she'd been asking about without asking for years. And despite everything, despite the hurt and the anger, and the years of doing this alone, I knew what I had to say. "This isn't about what I want," I said. "It's about what's best for Jane." "And what is that?" I looked at him, really looked at him, searching for some sign that he'd changed, that he was capable of being what Jane deserved. All I saw was a man carrying the weight of a decade of regret. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm going to find out. She can see you again. Supervised visits. We'll go slow." "And Andrew," I stepped closer, making sure he heard every word. "The first time you cancel on her, the first time you choose work over showing up, this ends. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Say it." "I understand," he said clearly. "If I fail her, I lose her. And you." The bathroom door opened. Jane emerged, looking between us with worried eyes. "Are you fighting?" she asked quietly. "No," I said, softening my voice immediately. "Just talking." Jane crossed to Andrew, and I watched her make a decision. "Can I hug you?" she asked. I watched Andrew's face transform. Shock, gratitude, something that looked like pain and joy mixed together. "Yes," he said, voice breaking. "Please." Jane hugged him, brief, tentative, but real. When she pulled back, Andrew stayed kneeling. "Can I see you again?" he asked. Jane looked at me, and I realized this was the moment. The choice I'd been dreading. I could protect her, keep her safe from potential disappointment, maintain the life we'd built without him. Or I could trust her. Trust that she was strong enough to handle this. Trust that maybe, just maybe, some people could change. I nodded. Yes, I said. You can see him again. Jane smiled. Small, hopeful, fragile. And Andrew closed his eyes like he'd just been given the world. Some choices feel impossible because both answers are right and wrong at the same time. But as I stood there watching my daughter decide to give her father a chance, I realized this was never my choice to make. It was hers. And all I could do was stand beside her and catch her if she fell. Yes, Jane said, looking up at me. I want to see him again. And just like that, Andrew Larry became part of our lives. The visit started small. Coffee on Wednesday afternoons at a cafe halfway between my apartment and his office. Supervised, structured, safe. I sat at the same table every time, watching them together over the rim of a cup I barely drank. Andrew would ask questions, careful, thoughtful questions, and Jane would answer, growing more comfortable with each meeting. What's your favorite subject in school? Science. But I like English too. We're reading mythology. Which myth is your favorite? Prometheus. Because he stole fire for humans even though he knew he'd be punished. Andrew smiled at that. Sounds like someone who understood sacrifice. Jane nodded seriously. Mom says sometimes you have to do hard things for the people you love. I felt Andrew's eyes on me then, but I didn't look up. The conversations were polite at first, almost formal. Like they were both reading from scripts, afraid of saying the wrong thing. But slowly, something shifted. 2 weeks in, Jane started bringing things to show him. Her science notebook with detailed drawings of planetary orbits. A rock she'd found that had quartz crystals inside. A story she'd written about astronauts discovering a new galaxy. Andrew examined each item like it was priceless. You wrote this? He asked, holding up the story with genuine wonder. Yeah, it's not that good. It's incredible, he said. And he meant it. I watched Jane's face light up. That particular glow children get when an adult they admire validates their work, and something in my chest tightened. Because I'd been saying things like that for 10 years. But hearing it from him meant something different. 4 weeks in, Andrew asked if he could take Jane to the Natural History Museum. Just the two of them. I hesitated, my protective instincts flaring. I'll have my driver bring her straight home after, Andrew said quickly. And I'll keep my phone on the entire time. I'll text you updates. Mom, please? Jane asked, her eyes hopeful. I looked at her eager face and couldn't say no. Okay, I said, but back by 6, not 6:15. 6. They returned at 5:47. Jane burst through the door talking a mile a minute about dinosaur fossils and meteorites, and how Andrew had bought her a book about black holes from the gift shop. And did I know that if you fell into a black hole, you'd stretch like spaghetti? And he knew all about the Cretaceous period, she said, breathless with excitement. He's really smart, Mom. Like, really, really smart. I know, I said quietly. That night, after Jane was asleep, Andrew texted me. Thank you for trusting me with her today. I know that wasn't easy. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I promise. 6 weeks in, the visits became routine. Wednesdays after school, Saturdays at the park, or a museum. A movie once, some animated thing about talking animals that Jane loved and Andrew pretended to enjoy. Andrew learned her rhythms, that she got quiet when she was tired, that she hated being late to anything, that she organized her books by color, not title, which drove her teachers crazy but made perfect sense to her. He started keeping snacks she liked in his car. Granola bars, not candy. Water bottles, not soda. Apple slices in a small cooler. He remembered, and I hated that I noticed. Jane warmed to him faster than I'd expected. Faster than I'd wanted, if I was honest. She started talking about him at dinner. Dad says that if I keep working hard in school, I could get into any college I want. Dad thinks I should enter the science fair next year. Dad said he used to be scared of public speaking too. So I shouldn't worry about my presentation. Dad. The word appeared more and more frequently, and each time it felt like a small betrayal of everything we'd built together. 8 weeks in, Jane had a school presentation on family history. She asked if Andrew could come. It's during the day, I said carefully. 2 p.m. on a Thursday. He probably has work. Can I ask him? She said, already reaching for my phone. I wanted to say no, to protect her from the disappointment of him choosing work over her, the disappointment I'd lived through, but I'd promised to let him try. Okay, I said. Jane called him that night on speaker, her voice nervous and hopeful. Hi, Dad. So, I have this presentation at school next Thursday at 2 p.m. about family history, and I was wondering if maybe you could come, if you're not too busy. It's okay if you can't. I'll be there, Andrew said immediately. What time should I arrive? Jane's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? Really, I wouldn't miss it. Email me the details? Okay? After they hung up, Jane hugged me tight. He said yes, she whispered into my shoulder. I heard. Do you think he'll actually come? And there it was. The doubt. The fear that had lived in me for 11 years now taking root in her. I don't know, baby, I said honestly, but I hope so. The day of the presentation, I sat in the back of Jane's classroom with the other parents, mostly mothers, a few fathers checking their phones. Andrew arrived at 1:55 p.m., scanning the room until he found me. He sat down beside me, slightly breathless, tie slightly askew. I moved 3 meetings, he said quietly, and told my assistant to handle the call with Tokyo. I didn't respond. Couldn't. When Jane's turn came, she walked to the front of the classroom with her poster board, her hands shaking slightly. My family is small, she began, her voice stronger than I expected. It's my mom and me, and recently, my dad. She glanced at us, both of us, and smiled. My mom raised me by herself. She works really hard. She's the strongest person I know. She taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the hard thing anyway. My throat tightened. And my dad, he wasn't there before, but he's here now. And he's teaching me that it's never too late to try to be better. That mistakes don't define you. What you do after them does. The presentation continued, but I barely heard it, because I was watching Andrew. His jaw was clenched. His hands gripped the edge of the tiny elementary school chair. And when Jane said, "He's here now," I saw his eyes go bright with unshed tears. After the presentation, Jane ran to us, beaming. "How did I do?" "You were perfect," Andrew said, his voice rough with emotion. "So perfect," I echoed. Jane beamed. As we walked out together, one of the other mothers, Mrs. Peterson, stopped us. "Your daughter is wonderful," she said to me. Then to Andrew, "And it's so nice that you could make it. So many fathers can't get away from work for school events." "I'll always make time for her," Andrew said simply. The woman smiled and walked away. And I stood there feeling something I didn't want to name. Jealousy. Hot, bitter jealousy. Because I'd been doing this alone for 10 years. I'd been the one at every presentation, every parent-teacher conference, every school play. I'd been the one rearranging my work schedule, begging for time off, showing up exhausted, but showing up. And now Andrew attended one event and everyone acted like he was Father of the Year. That night, Jane was drawing at the kitchen table while I made dinner. "Mom," she said. "Yeah? Are you mad that Dad came today?" I turned to look at her, surprised. "Why would I be mad?" "Because," she hesitated, her crayon pausing mid-stroke. "Because you were always enough before. And now there's him too. And I don't want you to think I don't need you anymore." I set down the knife I was holding and knelt beside her chair, taking her small hands in mine. "Jane," I said, "you loving your dad doesn't mean you love me less. Hearts don't work that way. They just get bigger." "Are you sure?" "I'm absolutely sure." She hugged me tight. "I love you, Mom. You're still my favorite." I laughed despite myself. "Don't let your dad hear you say that." "He knows," Jane said matter-of-factly. I told him. And somehow, that made it both better and worse. 10 weeks in, I noticed something. Andrew's phone rang less during our time together. He stopped checking emails mid-conversation. And when I asked Jane about their Saturday trips, she mentioned offhand, Dad doesn't travel for work anymore. He said he used to fly to different countries all the time, but now he does everything from home. He said it's because he wants to be here. I filed that information away, not sure what to make of it. 3 months in, everything felt different. Andrew had integrated into our lives so seamlessly it was almost frightening. He knew Jane's schedule better than some of my friends did. He texted me before making plans. "Can I take Jane to the planetarium Saturday? There's a new exhibit on exoplanets." He asked permission, not forgiveness. He was trying, really trying. And that was the problem, because it would have been easier if he'd failed, if he'd canceled plans, if he'd proven me right about people not really changing. But he hadn't. One Saturday afternoon, I picked Jane up from Andrew's house after they'd spent the day together. When I arrived, Andrew answered the door in jeans and a t-shirt. No suit, no polished billionaire armor. His house smelled like burnt cookies. "We attempted baking," he said sheepishly. "It went poorly." Jane appeared behind him, flower in her hair, grinning. She was wearing a sweater I didn't recognize. Soft blue cashmere, expensive but age-appropriate. "Dad got it for me," she said when she saw me looking. "Do you like it?" "It's beautiful." He said blue is my color, because of my eyes. His eyes. On the drive home, Jane was quieter than usual. Then she said, "I told Mia at school that Andrew is my dad." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you tell her exactly?" "That my dad and I are getting to know each other. That he wasn't around before, but he is now." She asked if that made me sad, and I said no. Because I have him now, and I have you. And that's better than just one or the other. She said it so simply, so certainly, like it was that easy, and I realized with a jolt of fear that cut straight through me. Jane was attached. Really, truly attached. Which meant Andrew now had the power to hurt her. The same power he'd had to hurt me. And if he left again, if he disappeared, if he chose himself over her the way he'd chosen himself over me, it wouldn't just break Jane's heart. It would shatter her. I pulled into our apartment complex and parked, but didn't get out immediately. "Jane? Yeah? I need you to remember something, okay? No matter what happens with your dad, you and I, we're solid. We're a team. Nothing changes that." Jane looked at me with those two perceptive eyes. "You're scared he's going to leave again," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I admitted. "Me too," she said quietly. "But Mom, maybe being scared is okay if the thing you're scared of losing is worth having." 10 years old and already wiser than me. Watching your child love someone who once broke your heart is its own special kind of torture. Because you want them to have that love. You do. But you also know, with terrible clarity, exactly how much damage that person is capable of doing. And all you can do is stand by and hope that this time, history doesn't repeat itself. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, 3.5 months after that first meeting. I was at work, shelving books in the children's section when my phone buzzed. School, Jane's principal. My heart stopped. Actually stopped for one terrible beat. "Ms. Baker?" Principal Morrison's voice was calm but urgent. "This is about Jane. She collapsed during PE class. She's conscious and responsive, but we've called an ambulance as a precaution." The world tilted sideways. "I'm on my way," I said, already running for my car. My hands shook as I drove. My mind raced through every terrible possibility. She'd been fine that morning, normal, happy. Complained about a math quiz, but nothing else. What if it was serious? What if I'd missed something? What if... The school was 40 minutes away in traffic. I made it in 25, breaking at least 3 traffic laws. But when I ran through the front doors toward the nurse's office, I stopped short. Because Andrew was already there. He was kneeling beside the cot where Jane lay, one hand holding hers, the other pushing hair back from her forehead. His suit jacket was discarded on a chair. His tie was loosened, top button undone. His usually perfect hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He was talking to her in a low, steady voice. "That's it, sweetheart. Just breathe. Nice and slow. You're okay. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Jane's eyes were closed, her face pale against the pillow, but she was breathing normally. Her small hand clutched his like a lifeline. The nurse saw me and stood. "Ms. Baker, she's stable. Vitals are good, just dehydration and exhaustion. The paramedics are on their way, but I don't think it's serious." I crossed to the cot, my legs weak with relief. "Jane?" Her eyes opened. "Mom." "I'm here, baby. What happened?" "I got dizzy during the relay race. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize," I said, gripping her other hand. "Never apologize for being sick." I looked at Andrew. "How did you—" "I'm listed as emergency contact now," he said. "Remember? You added me 3 weeks ago. The school called me first because my office is closer." "You left work?" "I left a board meeting," he said simply, his eyes never leaving Jane's face. "With the investors from Singapore. They flew in specifically for today." "Andrew, that's—" "They'll wait," he said, "or they won't. I don't care." But I saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't just saying that. He genuinely didn't care. The paramedics arrived moments later, 2 calm professionals who checked Jane's vitals, asked questions, decided transport was warranted just to be safe. "We'll take her to County General," one said. "You can ride with her, Mom." "I'll drive," Andrew said immediately. "Follow the ambulance. That way Stephen can stay with Jane." At the hospital, they took Jane back immediately. IV fluids, blood tests. Everything came back fine, just dehydration like the school nurse had said. "She needs to drink more water," the ER doctor said, a kind woman with gray hair. "And rest. Kids this age forget to take care of themselves when they're focused on schoolwork and activities." They moved Jane to a recovery room to finish the IV fluids. She fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the adrenaline crash. Andrew and I sat in plastic chairs beside her bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. The beep of monitors, the hum of fluorescent lights. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me shaky and raw. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for getting there so fast." "You don't have to thank me." "You left a meeting with investors who flew across the world." He looked at me, and his eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "Stephen, I don't care about the investors. I don't care about the meeting. I don't care about the deal. The second I got that call, nothing else existed. You said they'd wait." "I lied," he admitted. "I told them we were done and walked out. Didn't even grab my briefcase. My assistant texted me 20 minutes ago saying they're threatening to pull out. It's a $47 million deal, and I still don't care." I stared at him. "Andrew, that's—" "My daughter needed me," he said, voice breaking slightly. "That's the only thing that matters." We sat in silence for a while, the beep of Jane's monitors filling the space between us. Then Andrew said, so quietly I almost didn't hear, "When I got the call, I couldn't breathe. For a moment, just one terrible moment, all I could think was, what if something happens to her before I really get to know her? What if I lose her before I've even had her?" His hands were shaking. "And I realized," he continued, "that this is what you've lived with for 10 years. This fear, this responsibility, this love that makes you vulnerable to unimaginable pain. Alone." I didn't respond, couldn't. "I thought I understood what I'd walked away from," he said. "But I didn't. Not really. A child isn't just an idea or an obligation or a name on a birth certificate. She's everything. She's every hope and every fear wrapped together. And I threw that away because I was too much of a coward to admit I wanted it. Andrew, I know I can't fix it," he said, turning to face me. "I know I can't go back and make different choices. I know sorry is just a word. But I need you to know, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not the man who walks away when things get hard. I'm not choosing work over her, not ever again." "People say that all the time," I said, "and then they leave anyway." "I know," his voice was raw, "but I'm not asking you to believe me because of what I say. I'm asking you to watch what I do. Watch me show up. Watch me choose her. Every single time." There was no performance in his voice. No charm. No billionaire polish. Just raw, desperate honesty. "Why now?" I asked. The question that had been lodged in my chest for months. Why is she worth staying for when we weren't? Andrew was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I was 26 and terrified, and convinced that success would make me happy, and everything else was a distraction. Because I thought I had time to figure it out later. Because I was a selfish bastard who didn't understand that some opportunities don't come twice. And now? Now I know better," he said. "Success is empty when you have no one to share it with. And time? We never have as much as we think we do." He looked at Jane, sleeping peacefully, her small hand curled against the white hospital sheets. "I missed 10 years of her life," he said, his voice cracking. "Her first words, her first steps, her first day of school, the first time she learned to ride a bike or tie her shoes or read a book by herself. I can't get those back, but I can show up for everything that comes next. And I will. Even if you never forgive me. Even if you never let me be anything more than her father. I'll show up." I watched a tear slide down his face that he didn't bother to wipe away. And I realized something. This wasn't the smooth, controlled billionaire from magazine covers. This was a man breaking open, becoming someone new. "When she wakes up," I said quietly, "she's going to ask for you first." Andrew's eyes snapped to mine. "What?" "She always does now. When she's scared or hurt or needs comfort, she calls for you first." "But you're her—" "I know what I am," I said. "But you're her dad. And she loves you. And that means you have the power to destroy her. So please, Andrew, please don't." The weight of that truth hung between us. "I won't," Andrew said fiercely. "I swear to you, Stephen, on everything I have, I will never—" "Dad?" We both turned. Jane was awake, blinking slowly, the IV tube trailing from her small hand. Andrew was at her side immediately, taking her hand gently. "Hey, sweetheart, how do you feel?" "Tired, thirsty." "You stayed?" "Of course I stayed." "What about your meeting?" "Meetings can wait," he said, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "You can't." Jane smiled, small, sleepy, trusting. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too, always." She looked past him to me. "Mom?" "I'm here too, baby." "I know. You're always here." She said it with such simple certainty, such faith. "Both of you." Then she closed her eyes again, her hand still holding Andrew's. "Don't leave yet," she mumbled, half asleep already. "I won't," Andrew said softly. "I promise." "Okay," she whispered. "Love you." Andrew's breath caught. It was the first time she'd said it. "I love you too," he said, his voice breaking. "So much." I watched them, my daughter and her father, and felt something shift deep inside me. For 10 years, I'd been terrified of this moment. Terrified that Andrew would come back. Terrified that he'd take Jane from me. Terrified that I wouldn't be enough compared to his money and his world and his everything. But watching him now, exhausted, tie askew, holding our daughter's hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth, I didn't see a threat. I saw a father. Flawed. Late. Trying desperately to be better. And for the first time since that DNA test turned our lives upside down, I let myself consider the impossible. What if he really had changed? What if people could grow into who they were always supposed to be? What if second chances were real? The problem with walls is they keep everything out. The bad, yes, but also the good. And standing there in that hospital room, watching the man who broke my heart hold our daughter like she was made of glass, I felt my walls begin to crack, not crumbling, just shifting, making room for something I wasn't ready to name. If you've ever watched someone change, really change, and had to decide whether to trust it, leave a comment. Because these moments, when we choose hope over fear, they're the hardest and the bravest things we do. Subscribe if you're still with me. Because what comes next changes everything. The problem with walls is they keep everything out. The bad, yes, but also the good. And standing there in that hospital room watching the man who broke my heart hold our daughter like she was made of glass, I felt my walls begin to crack. Not crumbling, just shifting. Making room for something I wasn't ready to name, something that felt dangerously close to hope. The weeks after the hospital became something different. Andrew didn't just show up anymore, he stayed. Friday night dinners at my apartment became routine. He'd arrive at 6 with takeout from restaurants I couldn't afford. Thai food, Italian, once an elaborate sushi spread that Jane loved and I pretended to understand. We'd eat at my small kitchen table, elbows almost touching, while Jane talked about her week. School gossip, science projects, the book she was reading about Marie Curie. Andrew listened like every word mattered. And I watched. I watched him learn to cook Jane's favorite pasta, penne with butter and parmesan. Nothing fancy. I watched him quiz her on vocabulary words, patient through every mistake. I watched him teach her chess, explaining strategies she was still too young to fully grasp but would remember later. I watched him fit into spaces I'd built alone. One Saturday, we took Jane to her soccer game together. We sat in the bleachers side by side, our thighs almost touching on the narrow bench, cheering when she scored, groaning when the ref made a questionable call. Like a normal family. Like this was always how it had been. Afterward, Mrs. Peterson from Jane's class approached us, smiling. "You two are such a lovely couple," she said warmly. "Jane is so lucky to have parents who get along so well." We didn't correct her. On the drive home, Jane said from the back seat, "Mrs. Peterson thinks you're together." "I know," I said carefully, keeping my eyes on the road. "Are you?" Andrew's eyes met mine briefly before returning forward. "We're co-parenting," I said. "We're friends." "You look at each other like more than friends," Jane said matter-of-factly, out of the mouths of babes. "Jane," I started. "It's okay if you are," she said quickly. "I just want to know." I didn't have an answer. Because I didn't know anymore. The line between co-parenting and something else had blurred so gradually I hadn't noticed it happening. That night, after I'd put Jane to bed, Andrew lingered in the doorway like he had every Friday for the past month. "I should go," he said. But he didn't move. "Okay," I said. "Stephen." "Don't," I said, already knowing where this was going. "Don't what?" "Whatever you're about to say, don't." He stepped into the apartment fully, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." "There's everything to talk about," he said. "We're spending every weekend together. We're having family dinners. Jane thinks we're a couple. Hell, I'm starting to think we're a couple. We're co-parenting, like we agreed. Is that all this is to you?" His voice was careful, controlled, but I heard the edge underneath. The question hung between us. "It has to be," I said. "Why?" "Because you left, Andrew." The words burst out before I could stop them. 11 years of hurt pouring through the cracks. "You left when I needed you most. You chose your career over your family. And now you want me to, what? Pretend that didn't happen? Fall back into your arms because you're trying to be a good dad for a few months?" "I'm not asking you to pretend." "Then what are you asking?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration breaking through his usual control. "I'm asking if there's any possibility," he said, "any chance at all that you could forgive me, that we could be something, a family, a real one. We're not a fairy tale, Andrew. You don't get to ride in on your white horse with your billions and fix everything you broke. That's not what I'm trying to do." "Isn't it?" I challenged, my voice rising. "You show up with expensive gifts and trips to museums and connections that could get Jane into any school she wants. You're trying to buy your way into being her father." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Fair?" My voice cracked. "You want to talk about fair? I raised her alone for 10 years. I worked double shifts to make rent. I missed sleep and opportunities and any chance at a normal life because I was doing it by myself. And now you swoop in with your money and your resources and everyone acts like you're father of the year for doing the bare minimum? I know what you sacrificed. You don't know anything," I was shouting now, and I didn't care. "You know what you read in her school records. You know what I've told you in careful, edited versions. But you weren't there. You weren't there when she was sick at 3 in the morning and I didn't have money for a doctor. You weren't there when she asked why she didn't have a dad like the other kids and I had to smile and lie. You weren't there, Andrew, and money doesn't change that." The silence after my words felt deafening. Andrew's face had gone pale, but his voice was steady when he spoke. You're right, he said quietly. I wasn't there, and I can't change that. But I'm here now. And yes, I have resources that make some things easier. But I'm not trying to buy her love or yours. I'm trying to give both of you, the life you deserve. She already had a life. A life where you struggled, he said, frustration finally bleeding through. Where you had to work yourself to exhaustion just to make ends meet. Where you couldn't afford doctor's visits or school trips or… We were fine. You were surviving. His voice rose to match mine. That's not the same as thriving, and I can help with that. I want to help with that. Providing for her, for you, it's not charity, Stephen. It's my responsibility. One I should have been handling all along. So this is about guilt? This is about being her father. You can't just throw money at 10 years of absence and call it fatherhood. Then what do you want from me? Andrew demanded, his control finally snapping. I'm showing up. I'm learning her favorite foods and her routines and what makes her laugh. I'm putting her first. What else can I possibly do? I want you to understand, I said, my voice breaking, that some things can't be fixed. Some damage is permanent, and I can't let myself believe in you again just to have you leave when the next big opportunity comes along. The truth of it hit us both. This wasn't about Jane anymore. This was about me. About the girl who'd been left pregnant and alone. About the wound that had never fully healed. Andrew's expression softened, anger draining away. I'm not going to leave, he said. You don't know that. Yes, I do. People don't change, Andrew. Some do, he said quietly, when they have a reason to. He took a step closer. And I could smell his cologne, something cedar and expensive that shouldn't have made my heart race but did. You're right about everything, he said. I left. I was a coward. I chose wrong, and I can't fix that. But I can choose differently now, every single day. I can choose to show up, to be present, to be the man you both deserve. And what happens when work gets demanding again? I asked, hating how my voice wavered. When some opportunity comes along that requires all your time and energy, what happens then? I choose you, he said simply. Both of you, every time. You say that now. 3 months ago, I restructured my entire company, he said. I promoted my VP to COO and delegated 80% of my daily responsibilities. I cut my board meetings in half. I turned down 3 acquisition offers that would have required constant travel. I haven't flown internationally since I met Jane. I stared at him. You never told me that. Because I wasn't doing it to impress you, he said. I was doing it because it's what I should have done 11 years ago. Because you can't build a family part-time. Because I finally understood what matters. And what matters? Her, he said. You. This. Everything I was too blind to see before. We stood there, breathing hard, the weight of 11 years between us. Then, from the hallway, "Are you breaking up?" We both froze. Jane stood in the doorway of her bedroom, wearing her pajamas, clutching Professor Carrot. Her eyes were wide and frightened. "Sweetheart," I started. "I heard you fighting," she said, her voice small. "About me. You were yelling." "We're not fighting about you," Andrew said immediately, crossing to her. "Never about you." "Then what?" She looked between us, tears gathering. "Why were you yelling?" Neither of us had an answer she'd understand. Jane's chin trembled. "I don't want you to fight because of me," she whispered. "If having both of you is too hard, if it makes you hate each other, I can go back to how it was, just me and Mom. I don't want to make things worse." My heart shattered. "Jane, no." "I don't want to be the reason you're sad," she said. And now tears were sliding down her cheeks. Andrew dropped to his knees in front of her. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You are not the reason for anything bad. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me. To both of us." "Then why are you fighting?" "Because adults are messy," I said, kneeling beside Andrew. "Because your dad and I are figuring out complicated feelings. But none of it is your fault." "Do you hate each other?" she asked. "No," Andrew and I said simultaneously. Jane looked between us, confused and hurting. "Then what?" I looked at Andrew. He looked at me. And in that moment, I saw my own fear reflected in his eyes. We don't hate each other, I said quietly. That's what makes this complicated. The worst thing about unresolved feelings is they don't stay contained. They leak out into everything else, into arguments that aren't really about what you're arguing about, into fears that masquerade as anger, into walls that feel like protection but are really prisons. And sometimes the people you love most get caught in the crossfire. I got Jane back to bed, but neither of us slept. I sat on the edge of her mattress, stroking her hair in the darkness, murmuring reassurances that felt hollow even as I spoke them. Everything's going to be okay. We weren't fighting about you. We're fine. But she knew better. Kids always do. After an hour of lying with her, I thought she'd finally drifted off. I started to stand, my back aching from the awkward position. Mom? Yeah, baby. Can we talk? Really talk? I settled back down, pulling the blanket up around her shoulders. Of course. Jane sat up, pulling her knees to her chest. In the dim glow of her nightlight, the one shaped like Saturn that Andrew had given her, she looked younger than 10. Vulnerable. I'm scared, she said. Of what? That Dad's going to leave again, that he'll decide it's too hard or I'm not worth it, or that you two fighting is too much trouble, and he'll just go. My throat tightened. Jane. And I know you don't trust him, she continued, her fingers picking at the edge of her blanket. I hear it in your voice when you talk to him, like you're waiting for him to mess up, like you're keeping score of everything he does wrong. And I get it. I do. He wasn't there before. She looked up at me with those dark eyes, Andrew's eyes, filled with a wisdom that shouldn't belong to a child. But Mom, he's here now. And I know he's not perfect. I know he made mistakes, a really, really big mistake. But everyone makes mistakes, right? You always tell me that people deserve second chances if they're really trying. That's different. Why? Jane's voice was small but firm. Why is it different when it's him? I didn't have an answer that made sense. I don't need perfect, Jane said quietly. I just need honest. I need to know if you're going to let him stay. Because if you're not, if you're going to make him leave eventually, I need to know now. Before I love him any more than I already do. The words hit me like a physical blow. You love him? Of course I do, she said simply. He's my dad. I pulled her into my arms, blinking back tears. I'm sorry, I whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry, baby. You shouldn't have to worry about this. I don't want you to be alone anymore, Jane said against my shoulder. You're always taking care of me. You work so hard. You never do anything just for you. But who takes care of you? I take care of myself. That's not the same thing, she said, pulling back to look at me. And it's lonely. I see it sometimes. When you think I'm not looking. You get this sad look on your face, like you're missing something. My breath caught. Dad looks at you like you're the most important thing in the world, she said. And you look at him like you're scared he's going to disappear. And I think maybe you both deserve to be happy, together. It's not that simple. I think grown-ups make it complicated when it doesn't have to be, Jane said with heartbreaking clarity. You love him, he loves you, he loves me, you love me. Why can't that be enough? Because love hadn't been enough before. Because I'd loved him once and he'd left anyway. Because opening my heart to Andrew Larry again meant risking everything I'd carefully rebuilt. But looking at my daughter, brave, hopeful, pleading, I realized something. I wasn't protecting her anymore. I was protecting myself. And in doing so, I was denying her something she desperately wanted. A whole family. You're right, I said finally. I am scared. And maybe that's not fair to either of you. So what are you going to do? Jane asked. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I promise I'll figure it out, okay? Okay. She hugged me tight. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. So much. After Jane finally fell asleep, for real this time, I found Andrew sitting on my apartment steps outside, tie loosened, head in his hands. He looked up when I opened the door. "Is she okay?" he asked immediately. "She's asleep." "Stephen, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. I shouldn't have—" "She thinks she's the problem," I interrupted, sitting down beside him on the concrete steps. The night air was cool against my skin. Andrew's face crumpled. "God, what did she say?" "That she's afraid you're going to leave because we're fighting. That she's willing to go back to it being just me and her if it means we'll stop." "I would never." "I know," I said. "But she doesn't. Not deep down. Because she's 10 years old and her entire understanding of you is that you left once. And children whose fathers leave once learn to expect it again." Andrew pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. "I'm terrified I'm going to screw this up," he said, voice muffled. "That I'll fail her. That I'll fail you. That I'll prove you right about everything." "You want the truth?" I asked. "Always." "I'm terrified too," I admitted. "I'm terrified that the second things get hard, the second your company needs you or some opportunity comes along, you'll choose that, like you did before. And Jane will be the one who gets hurt. That won't happen." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can," Andrew said fiercely, turning to face me. "Because I finally understand what I almost lost. Not intellectually. I understood that when I saw the DNA test. But in here." He pressed his fist against his chest. "I feel it every single day. The weight of what I threw away. The miracle that I somehow got a second chance. And I will not waste it." "What if you do anyway?" I asked. "What if good intentions aren't enough?" "Then I'll fail knowing I tried," he said. "But Stephen, I restructured my entire life for this. I turned down partnerships that would have doubled my net worth. I declined speaking engagements and board positions. I told my company I'm only available for true emergencies, because nothing is more important than being here. Nothing." I studied his face in the yellow glow of the porch light. "When did you do all that?" "The week after the hospital," he said, "when I realized I'd almost lost her before I really had her. And when I realized that loving her meant loving you, that you're a package deal, that I can't be Jane's father without showing up for her mother too. Andrew, I'm in love with you," he said. The words tumbled out rushed, desperate. I never stopped. Even when I convinced myself I had, even when I built an empire to fill the hole you left, I was lying to myself. And I know I don't deserve another chance with you. I know sorry is just a word, but I'm asking anyway. Please, let me try. My heart hammered in my chest. "This can't be some grand romantic gesture," I said. "This has to be real, slow, honest, with space to fail and fight and figure things out messy. I know. And if you hurt her, if you hurt either of us, there's no third chance. This is it. I understand. And we do this my way, on my timeline, when I'm ready. Whatever you need," he said. I took a breath, released it slowly, like letting go of armor I'd worn too long. "Okay," I said. Andrew's eyes widened. "Okay?" "Okay," I repeated. "We try, slowly, carefully. But we try." For the first time in months, Andrew smiled. Really smiled. The kind that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. "I won't—" "Don't promise," I interrupted, echoing what Jane had said. "Just show me." "I will, every day, for as long as you'll let me." He reached for my hand tentatively, giving me space to pull away. I didn't. His fingers closed around mine, warm, solid, real, and something that had been clenched tight in my chest for 11 years finally loosened. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. My breath caught. I should have said no. Should have gone slow like I just demanded. But sitting there in the cool night air, his hand in mine, I realized sometimes slow isn't what heals you. Sometimes you have to leap. "Yes," I whispered. He kissed me like I was precious, like I was something he'd lost and found again and would never take for granted. Gentle at first, then deeper, his hand coming up to cup my face. And I let myself feel it. The hope, the fear, the possibility, the terrifying, exhilarating chance that maybe some stories get second beginnings. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone try to love you again. Not because you've forgotten what they did, but because you've decided that fear isn't going to write your story anymore. That maybe, just maybe, second chances aren't about erasing the past. They're about choosing a different future. If this moment resonated with you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever given someone a second chance, or wished someone would give you one, leave a comment. Tell me what happened, because your story matters too. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're almost to the ending, and I promise, it's worth the wait. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone try to love you again. Not because you've forgotten what they did, but because you've decided that fear isn't going to write your story anymore. That maybe, just maybe, second chances aren't about erasing the past. They're about choosing a different future. 1 year after that DNA test arrived, our lives looked completely different. Not all at once, not in some dramatic transformation, but in small, steady ways that built something real. Andrew didn't move in right away. We took it slow, painfully, carefully slow. But he had a key to my apartment, and I had one to his house. He kept Jane's favorite cereal at his place. I kept his preferred coffee pods at mine. His toothbrush appeared in my bathroom. My books showed up on his nightstand. Life integrated in quiet ways. Friday nights became sacred. Pizza, always from the same place, always pepperoni for Jane, mushroom for me, everything for Andrew. And a movie. All three of us on my worn couch that Andrew could have replaced with a single paycheck, but never offered to. Because he understood finally that this wasn't about money. It was about showing up. And he did. Every single time. 4 months in, he made it to Jane's science fair, where she won first place for her project on light pollution and its effects on migratory birds. He stood in the back of the gymnasium, recording on his phone like every other parent, tears in his eyes when they announced her name. 6 months in, he learned to braid Jane's hair, badly at first, lumpy and loose, then competently. Then with the kind of muscle memory that comes from practice and patience. 8 months in, he attended his first parent-teacher conference with me. Sat in chairs too small for adults while Mrs. Chen praised Jane's work ethic and creativity. Andrew took notes, asked questions, scheduled follow-up emails about accelerated math programs. He became part of our rhythm without trying to control it. One Saturday morning, 10 months after that first meeting, I woke to voices in the kitchen. I padded out barefoot to find Andrew and Jane making pancakes, or attempting to. Flour dusted every surface, batter splattered the stove, an eggshell floated in the bowl. "We're making breakfast," Jane announced proudly, her hair in one of Andrew's lopsided braids. "I can see that," I said, surveying the disaster with barely suppressed laughter. Andrew grimaced sheepishly. "We may have gotten ambitious. You think?" But I was smiling. And when Jane plated a slightly burnt, oddly shaped pancake and presented it like a Michelin star creation, I ate every bite. This was what family looked like. Messy, imperfect, real. The shift happened so gradually I almost didn't notice. Andrew stopped asking permission for everything and started just knowing. He knew Jane had a math test on Thursdays and needed extra encouragement. He knew she needed new cleats for soccer 2 weeks before I noticed. He knew I liked my coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar, and that I got quiet when I was stressed about bills. And somewhere in the middle of all that knowing, I stopped waiting for him to leave. Not consciously, not in one dramatic moment. But one evening I realized I'd stopped tensing when his phone rang. Stopped watching for signs he was pulling away. Stopped building contingency plans for when it all fell apart. Because it wasn't falling apart. It was coming together. One evening, after we'd put Jane to bed, Andrew and I sat on my apartment balcony, barely big enough for 2 chairs, overlooking a parking lot instead of a skyline, but ours. "I need to tell you something," he said. My stomach clenched with old fear. "Okay." "The press found out about Jane." My hands tightened on my coffee mug. "What?" "One of the gossip sites is running a story next week. Billionaire CEO's secret daughter revealed. They have photos of us at her soccer game last month." "Andrew, I already talked to my lawyers," he said quickly. "We can't stop them from publishing, but we can control the narrative. I want to release a statement before they do. Simple, honest. Acknowledging that I have a daughter, that I wasn't part of her life before, and that I'm grateful for the chance to be her father now. Have you asked Jane how she feels about this? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I looked out at the parking lot, processing, thinking about Jane's privacy, her right to a normal childhood. She's going to be in the spotlight, I said. People are going to have opinions. They're going to judge her, judge us, say horrible things on the internet. I know, Andrew's voice was steady, but hiding her feels wrong, like I'm ashamed, and I'm not. I'm proud to be her father, proud of who she is, proud of you, and I'd rather own the truth than pretend she doesn't exist. Even though it makes you look bad? The billionaire who abandoned his kid? I did abandon her, he said simply, no defensiveness. That's the truth, and I'd rather own it than protect my image at her expense. I turned to look at him. We tell her together, I said. Tomorrow morning. And she gets to decide how public she wants to be. If she wants to stay anonymous, we fight for that. If she wants to go public, we prepare her for what that means. Agreed. We told Jane the next morning over pancakes, the kind Andrew had finally learned to make properly. She listened carefully, her face serious, asking a few clarifying questions. Then she said, "So, people are going to know you're my dad?" "Yes," Andrew said. "And they're going to know you weren't around before?" "Yes." She considered this, taking a bite of pancake, chewing thoughtfully. "Good," she said finally. "Because you should tell the truth, even when it's embarrassing. That's what you taught me." Out of the mouths of babes. The statement went out 3 days later. The media went predictably wild for 48 hours. Think pieces about wealth and responsibility. Judgment about both of us, speculation about reconciliation. Then the news cycle moved on. And we were just us. A family? Unconventional. Complicated. Real. 11 months after the DNA test, Andrew asked me to dinner. Just the two of us. No Jane. An actual date. "Are you asking me out?" I teased as he stood in my doorway, nervous in a way I'd never seen him. "I'm asking you to let me take you somewhere nice and treat this like what it is," he said. "Not co-parenting, not friendship, a relationship." My heart stuttered. "Okay," I said. He took me to a small Italian restaurant, intimate, quiet, the kind of place where the owner greeted him by name but not with fanfare. Not flashy, not expensive for the sake of being expensive. Perfect. Over wine and pasta, we talked, really talked, about Jane, about us, about the future. "I want more of this," Andrew said, setting down his fork and looking at me intently. "More nights like this. More mornings with pancakes and chaos. More of building a life together. We are building a life together. I want to make it official," he said. "Eventually, when you're ready, I want Jane to have both her parents under one roof. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want all of it." That's a lot of wants. I know. And I'm not pressuring you. I'm just telling you where my heart is, so you know. So there's no uncertainty about what I'm working toward. I set down my wine glass, looking at him across the table. This man who'd been so many things. A mistake, a regret, a ghost, and now, a partner. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting here with you, contemplating a future together, I would have laughed, I said. Or cried, probably both. And now? Now I think maybe the scariest things are the ones most worth doing. Andrew reached across the table, taking my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "I love you, Stephen Baker. I loved you when I was too stupid to choose you. And I love you now that I'm smart enough to know what I almost lost." Tears pricked my eyes. "I love you too," I said. "I'm still scared sometimes. I still have moments where I wonder if this is real, but I love you." He smiled. That real, unguarded smile I'd seen more and more of lately. "That's enough," he said. "That's more than enough." 13 months after that DNA test arrived, we were having dinner at Andrew's house, the three of us, plus my best friend Amanda, who Jane adored. Jane was showing Amanda her rock collection, explaining the difference between igneous and sedimentary formations with the kind of enthusiasm only 11-year-olds possess. Andrew and I were cleaning up the kitchen, moving around each other with practiced ease. She's happy, I said, watching Jane through the doorway, her face animated and bright. Yeah, Andrew smiled, drying a plate. She is. We did that. You did that, he corrected gently. I just showed up late to the party. But you showed up, and you stayed. He set down the dish towel and turned to face me, something shifting in his expression. I'm going to keep showing up, he said. Every day, for the rest of my life, if you'll let me. Something in his tone made me pause. Andrew. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. My breath caught. I'm not asking yet, he said quickly, seeing my eyes widen. I promised we'd do this on your timeline, and I meant it. But I want you to know this exists, that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I am too. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple platinum band with a single diamond. Not ostentatious, not screaming wealth, just beautiful, elegant. Exactly what I would have chosen. I'm ready, I whispered. What? I'm ready, I said, louder this time, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Ask me, Andrew's eyes widened. Stephen, ask me. He dropped to one knee, right there in his kitchen, dish towel still draped over his shoulder. Stephen Baker, he said, voice shaking slightly. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the second chance you gave me? Will you let me be your partner and Jane's father and the man who gets to wake up next to you every morning? Yes, I said, laughing through tears. Yes, yes, yes. He slipped the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly, then stood and kissed me. Deep and sweet and full of promise. From the other room, Jane's voice rang out. Did he just propose? We broke apart, laughing. How did you? I started. Jane appeared in the doorway, grinning so wide her face looked like it might split. I helped him pick the ring 3 weeks ago, she said proudly. Did you really think we went to look at science stuff at the mall? Andrew and I looked at each other, then at our daughter. Our daughter who'd kept this secret, who'd been part of planning her own family's future. Come here, I said. Jane ran to us, and we pulled her into a hug, the three of us tangled together in Andrew's kitchen, laughing and crying and holding on tight. Our family, built not from biology alone but from choice, from showing up, from second chances and hard conversations and learning to trust again. This is what I've learned. Family isn't just about who's there at the beginning. It's about who chooses to stay, who fights for you, who shows up even when it's hard. And if you're watching this because you're a single mother wondering if you're enough, let me tell you, you are. You always were. But it's okay to let someone help carry the load. It's okay to choose hope. Share this video if it touched your heart. Comment if you believe in second chances. And subscribe because you just witnessed something real. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this story. We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony in a garden overlooking the ocean. Jane as maid of honor in a dress she'd picked herself. Blue like Saturn's atmosphere, she'd said. Amanda as my best woman. A handful of close friends. Andrew's mother, who cried when she met Jane for the first time. Nothing fancy, everything perfect. The officiant was a kind woman in her 60s who smiled when she talked about love being patient and kind and choosing each other daily. When she asked if anyone objected, Jane raised her hand. The small gathering went silent. I object, she said solemnly, her face serious. My heart stopped. Then Jane grinned. I object to waiting any longer, she announced. Can we get to the kiss part? I'm starving and there's cake. The garden erupted in laughter, relieved, joyous, full. We did get to the kiss part. And afterward, standing there with my husband's arms around me and my daughter beaming beside us in her Saturn blue dress, I understood the final truth. Some tests don't just tell you who you are, they tell you who you're brave enough to become. I bought that DNA test as a joke, a silly bonding moment with my daughter. I never expected it to blow up my carefully constructed life, to drag the past into the present, to force me to make impossible choices. But here's what I know now. Sometimes the things that break us open are the things that let the light in. The test didn't just reveal a father. It forced all three of us to confront who we were, who we'd become, and who we were willing to be for each other. If this story meant something to you, if it made you laugh or cry or think about your own second chances, please share it. Please leave a comment telling me what part hit you hardest. Because that's how we heal, by sharing our stories and realizing we're not alone. Sometimes I still think about that DNA test, the one I bought on a whim. The one that was supposed to tell us where we came from, Irish, German, Viking blood. It did tell us that. But it told us something far more important. It forced truth into light when silence would have been easier. It demanded honesty when lies felt safer. It gave Jane a father and gave me back a love I thought I'd lost forever. Not because of genetics, because of choice. The choice to show up. The choice to change. The choice to believe that people can grow into the best versions of themselves when they have a reason to. Andrew and I don't have a perfect marriage. We fight about whose turn it is to drive Jane to soccer practice. We disagree about screen time limits and whether 11 is too young for a cell phone. He still works too much sometimes, and I still have moments where old fear whispers that he'll leave. But he doesn't leave. He shows up. Every morning, every argument, every moment that matters and plenty that don't. And slowly, day by day, he's proving that some second chances are worth the risk. 2 years after the DNA test, Jane asked us a question over breakfast. Do you think you would have found each other again without me? Like if the test had never happened? Andrew and I looked at each other across the table. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe not. Then I'm glad I exist, Jane said, matter-of-factly, returning to her cereal. Andrew's hand found mine under the table. Me too, he said softly. Me too. And there, in our kitchen, our home now, all three of us, I realized something. The DNA test didn't create our family. Truth did. The courage to speak it, the strength to hear it, the grace to forgive it, and the faith to believe that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when everything falls apart and you choose to build something new from the pieces. Thank you for being here. For watching this whole journey. For witnessing this story of second chances and messy families and love that doesn't give up. If you believe in redemption, in forgiveness, in families that don't look like everyone else's but love just as fiercely, then you're my people. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose differently. And comment below, what would you do if a DNA test changed everything? Would you give a second chance? Would you risk your heart again? Tell me your story, because your voice matters. Your experience matters. Welcome to the sisterhood. Welcome home. Some tests tell you where you came from. The ethnicity percentages, the genetic markers, the ancestral maps. But the test that mattered most? It didn't tell me where I came from. It told me who I was brave enough to become. A woman who chose hope over fear. A mother who trusted her daughter with truth. A person who believed that second chances, real ones, earned ones, were possible. And standing here now, watching my husband teach our daughter to change a tire in our driveway, both of them laughing when the wrench slips, covered in grease and joy. I know the DNA test was never about biology. It was about becoming, about choosing, about building family not from blood alone, but from truth and time and showing up. Every single day. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because that's what love actually is.